I think I want to talk about today is just like that level of collective exhaustion we're all feeling. I know that I'm feeling it. This last week has been, you know, every single week has been so hard over the last year and a half, wherever we're at now. It's just exhausting, and I know that I talked to hello Sherry. I've talked to a lot of people over these last couple days who are just kind of burned out. I know that I'm burned out. And last week, I was all kind of building. You get to that. Hi, Luis. You get to that kind of level of you just need to step away for a second. And I always encourage everybody. Yeah, I'm so exhausted too, Judith. I always tell everybody you gotta take those mental health breaks. You've gotta take a moment for yourself. Sometimes, folks, one of the best things you can do, just lay down for a nap, take that rest if you can. There's a lot of things in some ways this last year, what it's taught me, it's like you're gonna have anxiety. Hello, Joanna. Morning. You're gonna have anxiety no matter what in life, and the difference is that it's more present right now. In the past, you could sit there and worry about, oh, my kid's future and going to college and am I gonna be able to make enough money to retire and all those worries. I mean, that's the thing, that's the silver lining of this. All those worries, like planning for a future, you don't have to worry about that at all right now because it doesn't feel like we're gonna have one. And so we're living in this perpetual anxious present. And, one of the main points of relief is just holding your family close, but just like that constant burden. And this morning I was feeling stressed out about some stuff, and it's just like the constant unnecessary burden, where everything is made unnecessarily complicated. And it's all based on this massive overarching belief structure that's in place that really does just justify our suffering. It's only put in place to justify our suffering. Hi, Kimmy. And we enable it by complying with it in some senses. But there's also that balance between, you know, uh, you have to protect yourself. You have to comply with this structure just so you're protected, but at the same point, we should be acting to legally and lawfully overturn the structure. And hi, Kimmy. Hi, American citizen. And that's what my topic of my talk is this morning. What I was thinking about as I was driving home. We all have a part to play. We all give what we can, And over the weekend, hi, Terry. Over the weekend, I got a couple of really weird messages, and first of all, I always think it's interesting. Um, if you write to me, I'll make my best effort to respond. And there's a lot of creators out there that will never respond to you. And I every single time when somebody writes to me, if I don't recognize them, I always check their little profile to see who they are, a paid subscriber, you know, who they support. And it's odd how I'll get people that'll spend a lot of time talking to me. I've engaged with them a lot, but then they go and support, and it's like if they have Michael Cohen in their profile, it's just like, okay, this person is not sincere. I had to block somebody who was just pestering. She kept jumping onto my articles, and she was pesting the readers that I've known and worked with for a couple of years. I don't want my readers to get harassed. And it started out, and it's like this is like a first day on Substack type issue where these people come on and they want to see this massive change. It's like we are working. There's things that we're doing right now. And I realize that you've got a viewpoint, but I have a viewpoint too. And we all need to be respectful to each other. One of the main things I've learned in this last year is that yes, the model that works really well is think of it as like four people climbing up four sides of a pyramid, and we see things that are different on each side. And we're all right, but we don't have a complete picture. And so we have to have space. Space and grace is the word, and I talked about it with Will Fullwood. Give each other a little space, give each other a little grace. Um, One of the things, yeah, we have to. Colleen makes a great comment. We all need to put the phone down for a day. I felt much better after being sick for 3 days. I was off the phone and my brain had time to rest. We need to do that. But another thing I want to mention is we really need to get back to this idea of academic disagreement, because we have to stop for a minute and recognize that what we don't have right now, we don't have two people in a larger perspective in our government. We don't have 2 political ideologies that are both sincerely believe that they're doing the best thing for everybody, and there's disagreement between the 2 of them. That's not what we have. We have one party that in the Democrats that really is kind of indifferent. Hi, Sandra. And then we have the openly oppressive right, the pedophile protectors. And so the debate is between those 2 things. And, we have to recognize we have to take a step back, like Colleen said, get away from your phone for a day and recognize it is possible to be in an academic setting with people that you respect, and you don't have to agree with everything they say because we all have those different perspectives. And too often I'll have people something will be become kinda like the topic of the moment. It'll be like the flavor of the moment. Um And one that's been happening lately is, changing the name from white supremacy to, they've been using phrases like white narcissism or white male supremacy. And I prefer to just go with the original term that Martin Luther King Jr. used. That's kind of my thought there. I think there's a little bit of confusion that is created when you're changing the terms around. So I just stick with white supremacy, but it doesn't mean that I'm disrespectful or angry at the people that are using other terms for other points of emphasis. I think that's important. Again, that's we're climbing up different sides of the pyramid. But where I do have a problem is when I use the term that I think is the appropriate term based on my understanding of what we're confronting. And people, who are new, they're on their first day of Substack, they think if I'll write a note and I'll mention that word, they'll disregard the content of my note and instead focus on that phrase. And they'll say, I think it was I hope I'm getting his name right, Kasim Rashid. I think that's how you say his name. And he'd been using white narcissism. And and hey Rachel, good to see Rachel there. And so I was saying, it's like I respect his perspective. I think that is important. But the way I look at the term white supremacy is that it is not saying that whiteness is supreme, is that it is a declaration of genocide. They're going to make it supreme by killing everybody. So I have a concern with calling it white narcissism because I think that trivializes the genocide aspect. But look, this doesn't mean that he has, oh, Portugal. Excellent. I'm happy that you're in Portugal. But this doesn't mean it's like, so I have a disagreement. It's an academic disagreement, but it's like I'm working at it from my angle and he's working it from his angle. I completely respect his angle and his right to work it from that angle. It doesn't mean that I am now his quote unquote enemy because, yeah, I don't think we need a new term either. But I mean, if people want to use new terms in the process of exploration, I want to give them that grace. And I think we too often end up divided and all this we have to stop and take a step back and just recognize this is all by design. Everything in our society right now is designed to make us divided because the billionaires want the regular people fighting each other. And so, if I'm writing a post about white supremacy, denouncing white supremacy, which I always do, and then somebody comes along and their takeaway from my post is to lecture me about not using a different term, that's kind of well, it's called a thought terminating cliche. It stops our chance of unifying and forming a coalition. Yeah, okay. I know, American citizen. I was gonna get to that, but let me say this. Nikki says, "I'm going to hear Jasmine Crockett speak this morning where I live." Okay, great. I'm glad. Okay, well, I'm glad Jasmine Crockett's speaking, and I know the primary is underway in Texas. So get out and vote for Jasmine. American Citizen just posted something important here. It says, Navy just purchased 55 billion in biomedical incinerators. What are they going to be using them for at the camps? Yeah. And that's a big fear. That's ongoing right now. And that's the perspective I think we need to set aside these kind of petty differences. And that's just what I wanted to reinforce. It's like people work problems from different angles. And it's not our place to say somebody else's personal integrity or personal inspiration is wrong, and then that makes them your enemy. They see things differently because they're a different person. And yeah, we have to come together because it does feel like um, this border. The secret police are rounding up people and burning their bodies. I mean, we have to overcome those illusions of disagreement. Um, well, and Terry Ann says the terms might not mean the same things. An example I want to use is when Einstein came up with his theory of relativity. He was working it from this kind of theoretical thought experiment angle. Other people were working the problem from a mathematical angle, and Einstein just happened to get there first, but the mathematical people would have gotten there too. There are multiple approaches to problems, and by taking different approaches, we learned more about the complex reality of our universe. So it would have been wrong for the mathematical oriented researchers to go to Einstein and say, "You're doing this all wrong. Stop with your silly thought experiments." And it would have been wrong for Einstein to tell them. And so what they could say, "That's interesting what you're doing. Let's both of us work in the ways that we feel most equipped to work, and we'll get there. And once we get closer together, maybe we can make that leap, intuitive leap, and bridge and see how the two sides that we were doing are actually the same thing." And so too often people just want you to comply with their way of doing things. And I think that is a side effect of this society we live in, which doesn't have academic disagreement anymore at the national level. Instead, it's just us or them, which is because the right wing has just embraced fascism. So that's a problem. But on our coalition, we have to have space for this academic disagreement because that's what helps us get a better perception of our reality. So that's really important. So the response can't be when you see somebody doing something that's not quite the way you think it should be done to just attack them and to assume that they're your enemy. We have to have that space to see why they're doing those things, or to see why they and there are things that can be understood from watching how other people go through their process. So I have a process, other people have a different process. We're all working together. It's really important. Yeah. Kimmy says keep checking in with ourselves. That's important. Joe says the sun just rose in LA. Good morning. Good morning, Joe. Yeah, and yes, and Jude says I'm talking as African American, racist encompasses it all. Yeah, and I mean, but there's just it's a complex issue. And so it's like as long as people, and then when I talk about Will Fullwood a lot too, he's like the word you use isn't, as important. It's just defeating the evil that's out there and the oppression and the mechanism of oppression. But it's a complex thing. And it's just what I'm talking about is how quickly people will just use a word choice that is not relevant necessarily, and then they'll just assume because you don't comply with their word choice that then you're now an enemy, and that's not the case. We need to just take that time, and I've learned that in this year because I know I was a little bit more quick to just assume somebody was against me, to be hostile and combative, and I think that hostility and that combativeness that's part of social media, it's baked into our system. It's by design. It's leveraged by design to undermine our ability to come together. So Amber says, Walter and I had the same reaction. Oh, Portugal. Yeah, Rachel's wonderful. I so appreciate Rachel. And I wrote her the other day saying we need to have a chance to talk again soon. There's just so many people. So many wonderful and intelligent people. All right. Department of Defense having trouble spending. This is from Barbara. Additional 500 billion while there is no money for kids to eat, medical care, or for retirees. Yeah. Just the cruelty that we're constantly confronted with right now. Hi, neurodivergent is, yeah, and that's a big part of the frustration. And I wanted to talk about too, it's just everybody, I just want to give everybody a reassurance that we're all working things. What you're doing is enough. Hi, Yolanda. I see Yolanda down there. I have a certain approach to things, and a big part of it is building this online community. But then there are other aspects where I'm in my community and I'm talking to the people around me. And there's this big divide too, I find, because so many people are yet in your face to face reality. They just don't have any comprehension about what's going on. And it's not so easy as we try to organize and how we try to bring people. I think in fact, the more people I can get to come and listen to these talks, to just kind of establish in kind of a gentle process, but I mean, like this hour talk is one sort of a form of activism. When I write a note, it's another form of act. I'm trying to do a different thing there. If I write just, a 140 character note, I'm trying to just kind of gauge a certain reaction and remind things and try things out. And then I'll often use those things when I go into the public. So when people come to me and they'll see that I'm doing a note or I'm doing a live and they assume I'm not doing anything in my community, well, that's an erroneous assumption. And if it contains this hostility, like you should be doing more. I had like 3 people over the weekend just come at me and tell me I need to be doing more. And I'm just like, well, show up every day. Show up for a month. I don't know who you are. These were new profiles. It's like, it's like before you say that, go and look at all the work I did in the last week. And And it's like, I'll be willing to listen to your constructive criticisms at that point. But if you're just on the basis of a note, making an assumption about everything I'm about, then that's kind of a hostility that I don't really feel inclined to tolerate. So yeah, I said hello to Neurodivergent, Yolanda, yeah, Barbara. Barbara edit biomedical incinerators. Hadn't heard about that one yet. I saw it. I saw that somebody had a heat map. They showed where all the different ones were possibly are. And these concentration camps, I think a lot of time the general media, this is what's got me concerned about because the Epstein files, that remains a huge thing. But there are other human rights violations going on right now that are equally awful. I mean, I suspect, and I want assurances, but that it's not happening, but I suspect a lot of women are getting raped in those detention centers. And children potentially are getting, I'm worried about that. And I think we need to have assurances that's not happening. And people aren't talking about it. And so, the Epstein files is the thing that gets all the headlines, but I mean, these detention centers need to be an equal part of our concern right now, especially if they're buying biomedical incinerators. Do we have lists of all the people that they've abducted? What has happened to them all? Oh, and they can't. They've lost many of them. Where have they been lost to? They need complete and open transparency and accountability, and we don't have it. Nikki says, James Tallarico was here yesterday and the crowd was big. The venue was not large enough for the crowd that showed up. It's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I just hope that Crockett wins it though, because Tallarico has aligned himself with Carville, and Carville's blatantly racist. And I just I'm not confident that they can win if they continue to listen to people like Carville. There are if Natasha Kay was putting out wonderful notes the other day based on her experience with the Harris campaign and just all the awful things that went on, the just incompetence within the campaign and the blatant racism. I mean, we have a lot of high-ranking Democrats who are blatantly racist, and those are the ones that come out and lecture to us. And every time the people start kind of coming together, they're the ones you see a lot of these establishment Democrats push us apart once we start coming together. So they see it as a threat to their power too. And this moment of mass recalibration that's happening, this awareness is big. And there's a lot of ways to combat it. I mean, one way is your community organizing. You get people together, you have face to face conversations. One of the things I'm trying to do, I've done this online organizing, talking to all you wonderful people. And then I use this, I've built enough of a platform where now I can invite in these progressive candidates. This week on Wednesday, I'm talking to Francesca Hong again. She's running for governor of Wisconsin. That's going to be Wednesday at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. Melissa Corrigan said she'd join me. And I think that's really critical where, because it's super important to talk in your community, but it's also the best way I feel that I can have the messages I'm trying to convey reach a bigger audience is through normalizing these conversations with progressive candidates. If we get them on Substack every single day and we just keep talking about it and make these progressive candidates, because we have to teach them. See, we can't abide by this. Oh, I'm going to be the loyal follower of this person. I don't expect that of any of you when it comes to me. I don't want to follow anybody who expects me to be that way with them. We have to have that academic disagreement and discussion where I'm allowed to use phrase that's a little bit different, but with respect and responsibility because I feel there's something in my intuition that tells me that's the way to go. And lately I've been following my intuition more than anything else. My intuition throughout my life has been my guiding light. And I feel that people end up convincing themselves to do evil things because they install a mechanism that allows them to override their intuition. So the more in touch you are with your personal heart, your integrity, your intuition, the better chance you have going forward. But I have to reserve the right to disagree with people who I respect. And we can disagree and have a respectful conversation and both of us learn more rather than having it be combative about you have to adopt the word I'm using or you have to adopt the word I'm. There are some cases where I'm flat out wrong too. And it's been important. But I often need time to think about it. Give me a couple days and I do think about these things. But it's just there's this expectation of instant compliance among the far right and in among the establishment Democrats that's very toxic. All right. Yeah, okay. It's the tessellation. See, Rachel does these wonderful words. The tessellation of the ideas that drives true innovation. I mean, people will come along with really great ideas. I realize that. And it's like, yeah, do the great idea, but instant compliance for everybody else is, that defeats it, it defeats it. It's like if it's working, if it's building, people will naturally come along, and sometimes people just need a week or a month to really absorb it, and that's what I'm finding in my community too. Because I talk to so many people who just aren't ready for a lot of the messages, and I'm trying to figure out how to make them ready. But I mean, I'm finding you need to talk to people with positive messages somehow, even with all the horrors that are going on right now. That's what I'm doing. Other people might do different things. I'm continuing to work on it every single day. And it could be I'll get to a point where I'll see the wisdom in what other people were doing. But unless I do my own process and get there in a way that follows my own personal integrity, it's not going to work for me. And I'm just going to be repeating things I don't fully believe in. So there's a really important thing in just talking about the things that you really do believe work. Yeah, Kimmy says the bigger tent, but I mean it has to be a selective tent too. We it's not just bigger. We need the better people in it. We can't. I mean, Carville's got to be kicked out. Frankly, all the pro life Democrats got to get out of the big tent because they're white supremacists, and once we start allowing the tent to embrace progressives and progressive ideals, that's going to be the secret. Um, Yeah, we should ask ourselves why we feel attacked by someone else's ideas. Yeah, and that's an interesting point because, I mean, I was talking about the notes I receive, and I'll use a word, and people just they say you're not doing enough. They use words of attack, rather than say, and then they make those assumptions too, because they'll assume. And I've had to write a lot of long articles about it. It's like this is why I picked this word. It's don't make the assumption it's me being frivolous. This was a deliberate choice for these reasons. But, yeah, people become once people propose a hypothesis, they sometimes they make the mistake of fusing that with their identity, and that is a white supremacy tactic, and this is another thing we always have to remember in the United States. Everybody in the United States is so indoctrinated with white supremacy thinking. So, this win mentality. So, if you come up with an idea, you think it's a great idea, and you say, "Hey, let's do this idea." And I say, "That is a good idea. I'm doing this right now. It's a little bit different, but I think it supports." And they say, "How dare you not just instantly comply with what I said, Walter?" It's because they've allowed that idea to be fused with their personal identity, so they feel it's an attack on themselves. When I say, "No, I think that idea is great. It's just that there's other things that I'm seeing from my side of the pyramid that mean it doesn't work." And then another thing is every community is different in the United States. This is a massive country. And where I'm at in my community, I'm an expert on the people in this little rural red county in Wisconsin. I know more about what's gonna work with them than any random person on the internet. And so when I say I like that idea, I'm gonna have to adapt it to fit my circumstances. People shouldn't get angry at me. They should recognize that that is a process. But when their identity is too much connected with their proposal, then they feel that I'm rejecting it rather than working with it. So this is just this is a complicated thing. Um, how do you know they are not bots? Some of them are bots, clearly. Yeah, I'm pretty good at identifying bots these days. And these comments, unless it's just a new form of bot, a more advanced form. I suppose they're deploying advanced ones all the time. Um, yeah, could be bots, but some of them too are usually I can tell if something comes from a person, and there is this is an ongoing thing where people they want compliance rather than especially when you are more of a progressive leaning person, they want you to just abandon those ideas and comply with the center. You see this hostility where I've got so many people with their "you're part of the problem" BS, you know. Uh Oh, yeah, and I'm not language use is and calling it out. Let me read this what neurodivergence is. I knew you weren't against me. Most people aren't, but unlike you, most people think I'm against them when I call on their language use. Now, there's a couple different and distinct scenarios here. Sometime when it's because I use the example of me calling it white supremacy because that's what Dr. Martin Luther King that's the term he used. And there are people that call me out and they say you should be using white narcissism, and I say, well, that trivializes the genocide element. So that's a conversation. We should have that conversation. But when people are making the assumption, I've had people like, words matter, Walter. I'm like, yeah, you're assuming I didn't think about it. I'm deliberately choosing the words. Now, there's other cases where if I use a word that causes anxiety or pain that I didn't recognize or intend, that needs to be called out. And, there's a case where it's like, "Oh, I appreciate what you're saying, but that word you used there was hurtful." And then they explain I still need to have a conversation with neurodivergent hodgepodge about this because I wanna have clarity on, what words are, what pain they cause. Because again, we've got people comparing other sides of the pyramid, and there's stuff I just don't see. And I do, over time, try to take in this feedback and change how I interact with people. I was talking to a candidate the other day, and he was using a word I didn't like, and I was trying to get him to substitute silver spoon Democrats for the word he was using, and I was gently kinda doing it in the course of the discussion, but he didn't really adopt it because he was using a misogynistic kind of word, and I was just like, "Buddy, your sentiment, I agree with. That word is a bad choice. You're gonna drive people away with that word." So that's what neurodivergent is talking about, but there's all these different scenarios where different things happen, and so we have to just hit pause, and mainly it is hitting pause on your just rage response, and, I'll but I get it's like, I guess I have to be more mindful of it myself because sometimes if you field the same question 6 times in a row and then, you start getting frustrated with it, that usually means I need to write an article on the subject or do a live like I'm doing right now. Um, yeah, it's ongoing thing. There's all these different aspects to this. All right, Barbara says, "It is by design to keep us at each other's throats and distracted from what the administration is doing." Yes. And what we have to know too is this mechanism that drives us apart existed long before this current regime. It's ongoing. We have to dismantle it. A lot of these assumptions we have. And I was watching Pete Buttigieg the other day and I was getting really frustrated with him. I mean, I love him as a candidate. He'd be a lot better, but he too is too much of a status quo guy. He needs to be denouncing these concentration camps. Every one of our politicians needs to be doing that. Yeah. And this is an epistemic war. Every word matters, meaning matters, and none of us is perfect. Yeah, and I mean, these are wonderful things to say, Rachel. And what my concern was when people make the assumption that I'm being frivolous when I do spend a lot of time. I mean, I would like to invite you all into my mind because there are a lot of times when I'll just be thinking about things somebody said, and these are the ones I don't block these people. I'll listen to it. I'll think, and it's like, is that? And it sometimes it takes a little while to understand. But that's the other thing I think people want. They have this false expectation for instant compliance, right? And even a good person is not going to instantly comply with somebody's suggestion. I've done this in real time. There's been times when I've talked with Nick and he's called me on something and you've been able in these videos to watch me work through the process. But I spend my whole day doing this, so I can do it faster than other people can. And I think we meet a lot of people in our reality that it's gonna take them a week sometimes to work through what they're saying. And I'm not sitting here trying to say, don't push them because then they'll be more set in their ways. That I don't agree with. We do have to call it out. But at the same time, we have to be more mindful on our own activism that when people are sincerely listening, and you can tell the difference, there's people that only react and they don't sincerely listen. You got to use different tactics. And then there's people that are sincerely listening and they're struggling with something. And in those cases, we have to provide them with a little space and grace. And then when they come back, have another conversation. But so often, especially on notes, things get really combative. And it doesn't have to be combative on these short form, any kind of thing that's like a scrolling type page, any type of social media. Things get combative, and just we can't let ourselves succumb to these uncharitable assumptions. Like, well, they're using that word because of ignorance. It's like, no, maybe they have a very good argument for the word that they're using, assuming it's not a word that is just overtly offensive. And if it's something like a complex phrase that you're using to describe a mechanism of oppression. So yeah, I mean, these things are these. I just wanted to convey. I'm not like frivolously reading everybody's comment and dismissing them. I spend a lot of time ruminating on this, and things change. So yeah, all right. Barbara says everyone contributes as they're able. In the U.S., we live more isolated lives than many other countries. It's too easy to get caught up in doom scrolling. We need these communities to realize we're not alone. I think I'm seeing too often people are dismissive of these online because I was getting a lot of, well, what are you doing? And they're just making the assumption because I do have content online that I'm not doing anything in the community, which is a false assumption because there's a lot I do. And I use these conversations online and talking to everybody. Um, but it's a different reality that you see on Substack versus in your real life. And so many of the people I meet, if they're not up to date, if they're not in this kind of academic community where they're actually engaging with the reality of our time, if they're only consuming legacy media that only is telling lies and propaganda, there's a big gap there. And those gaps are different. I mean, if you're in a blue city, I'm sure that gap is a lot smaller. I'm in a red rural community, so my gap is larger. And so it's going to take different tactics for me to engage with my community. The main tactic I'm using, as I've been saying, is I like to talk to these political candidates because I know these political candidates, the progressives that are up and comers, that are not establishment candidates. These are regular working class people that we can use to take back our government. If I can talk to them and have an influence on them, and when they go around in the community, because they've already got a mechanism in place. And I know too, like from talking with Will Fullwood and Natasha Kay, there's a lot of people that just really don't have a lot of hope for the Democratic Party. And I am in the camp that still has hope that we can elect progressives, if we can elect a number of them, if we could primary out the incumbents, if we could get in like 50 or 100, well, maybe probably not 100. If we could get in 50 progressive Democrats in the House of Representatives, I think that would have a major impact. There are other tactics people can use, but that's the main one I'm focusing on right now. I'm doing community work too. I've talked about how I called up the school, I called up the local churches. I do a lot of these things, but just don't. It's like the people that are making the assumptions because I post a 50-word note on Substack that I'm not doing anything else is just an uncharitable assumption to make. Thank you, Yolanda. And Amber says to keep us at each other's throats. Yes, I mean, and that's the thing. We really sometimes, and I think maybe over the weekend, because I took the weekend off and just took a step back. And it is important because we do get so wound up in this doom scrolling kind of community, this kind of atmosphere. And it's like, and at the end of the day, you're getting punchy. And I had King Rayvet told me, he said, you need to take a break because you're burned out. And it makes me punchy and it creates more fights. So I have to be mindful of that, moderate that myself too. There are days when I'm very good at it and I can absorb the blows. I told a story. There was this one woman she wrote me just this really harsh message. And, it's just full of profanities. But I sensed in that message pain. And rather than just block or scream back, I'm just like, I apologize for having contributed to this response. I want to help. And it was one of those cases where you get a good sense of when something is a bot comment and when something is a real human being in distress. But if I'd been tired, I might not have had the power to do that. So I changed. I'm like, I'm not the same person all the time. There's days when I'm exhausted. And there's that ongoing thing. So sometimes I don't handle those things as well as I could. I try to do better. Yeah. And Amber says to keep us at each other's throats, but also the basis we can't agree on the fundamental facts and truth. Yes. American Citizen said, Walter, here's a list of free, nonviolent ways to stand up against this shit and protect ourselves. United We Stand shop. Just trying to get that info. Great. United We Stand shop. So absolutely go there. I'll look at that too. But again, it's like people are coming up with great ideas, and I try to come up with one or two ideas every time we do one of these lives. And it can be little things. And I mean, we always have to remember a lot of people, they aren't capable for whatever reason. They're in a high risk group. They're physically sick. They can't go knocking on doors or they can't, they have to hide their identity. There's all kinds of reasons that people can't do the activism that we perhaps ourselves are doing. We also have to have grace for those people because they want to help. There's a lot of behind the scenes administrative type jobs you can do. Defend 612 there in Minneapolis. When I talked to Dan about that, he said, he's just looking for people that can come and help. They can have jobs for you. But I mean, there's also that element of rest. And I promise you, I've given everything I had. In this last year, I've been given it, and it gets to the point where, though there are times when I just sit for a second and fall asleep, and it's everything I got. And yeah, when you're always constantly at that point of exhaustion, you start creating disagreements. So we have to have grace with each other, recognize everybody is working hard. Thank you, Heather. That's so nice. Hi, Walter. We appreciate all your work, and you do a lot. And yeah. Oh, Kimmy's off to walk the dog, so that's good. I'm glad the doggy's getting a walk. And yeah, and I feel guilty too sometimes. I feel guilty for taking time off, but it's important for everybody to know You have to do it. You have to be mindful of your mental health. You have to give yourself a rest. You have to give yourself some space, and you can come back and fight longer. This is a marathon. It's not a sprint. Uh, Run when you can, walk when you have to, stop when you have to, and just absorb that and be mindful of that when we talk to other people. Let's have productive conversations where we're not so certain that our viewpoint is right, because I keep telling people we don't know how this is going to end. We have some ideas, and it seems to be narrowing a little bit. We're also right now, the regime has never been weaker. I mean, that's another thing I keep trying to tell people. And every time this lunatic, I apologize, that's probably not the good word. Every time our lawless president, he does something horrific, and every time he gets caught with his pants down, whenever he suffers a defeat, like he suffered with the tariff decision, like he suffered with Minneapolis, he pushes back, he doubles down on cruelty. And so we're in another period of that because we had a couple victories last week. You get like a day or two, and then the cruelty comes again. So we're in that wave of the cruelty again. And after that, it's just been these have been accelerating: defeat followed by cruelty, defeat followed by overreach, the incinerators, all the billions, and all these silver spoon Democrats who voted without even. I mean, they should be guilty of manslaughter for voting for that BBB, the big beautiful bill, because they've been using the money to kill people. They funded it. They funded domestic terrorism. They had the power to stop that bill, and they didn't. And it was just the recklessness of those decisions. That there has to be accountability for that. I think we need to have accountability for giving this lawless, cruel man, this I feel is an illegitimate president, all the funds to enact his idea of cruelty. And yeah, child trafficking, as American citizens said. Yeah, Miranda, in the past I've never been interested in politics. Now I'm deep into it and have learned too much. Yeah, and that's I know a lot of us feel that way. And we all just want to just do our jobs. Like, give me a job to do, just and then just leave me alone. Let me tell me, but they're asking for too much now. They're just squeezing everything from us. Yeah, American citizen, I'd love to do a live sometime. Neurodivergent asked. And yes, 23 new camps. We need to keep them from buying warehouses. Yeah, and that's been on my mind a lot when I talk to these candidates. And this week it's Francesca Hong, who she was fantastic. The last time I talked to her was the most empowered I've felt after talking to a candidate. I've been having a lot of talk with Emily Berge. She's wonderful too. And these wonderful women, these wonderful mothers who are out there fighting for us, and they're the ones who aren't going to put up with this uh, pedophile protection bullshit. So I really think I'm trying to make a strong emphasis on getting women elected using how I can. I mean, somebody there was this. It was a hard article somebody posted the other day, and it was just talking about the reality of how many men. How rape culture is so prevalent that it's not like a few bad apples. It's the number is really high. How many men would, given the opportunity, would commit the horrific abuse against humanity of a rape. And yeah, this is I read that article. I'm still thinking about it, and it's one of those reasons why I think my job right now is to be support and to trying to get. I mean, I did the same with my wife. I've helped her throughout the years, first getting her teaching certificate, then getting her master's degree. I think my job in this moment is to be a support person to help as many women reach positions of power and influence as possible. And so that's what I'm going to continue to do. I mean, the wonderful people ask me to run, and I'm like, I don't think that's the place for me. And I think we do. I think we need a new generation. We need a new wave of women leaders right now. They are treated as jobs programs for red states, following the dollars. Yep. And you see how many of these red states are entirely supported by um, taxpayer dollars. I've been using the term welfare billionaires because, and this is another odd thing that happens a lot, because I keep saying, yeah, and Judith says Carville's the opinion here again is Carville. That's my opinion. Carville is definitely racist. He drives people out of the party. He drives people out of the big tent if you support Carville. And Natasha Kaye talks about it too, how she felt kicked out of the Democratic they got plenty of room in there for white supremacists, but they don't have room for progressives, and that's why Democrats always lose. But yeah, the welfare for billionaires is the thing we have to talk about, and that's one of my ongoing things. It's like the taxing. When you say the word tax, half the population has already been indoctrinated by the right to reject it. So when you say tax the billionaires, people are like, nope. But if you say stop giving our free money to billionaires, that activates the right, and it should apply to both. So that's a better message. And I've had so many people that are like, why can't we say both? The reality is we only have billionaires in the United States because the United States government gave billions of dollars to a certain elite group. That's where the billionaires come from. It's not merit, it's not hard work. They receive that money for free from the government. And if you start just talking about that, if we stop just giving billions of dollars to billionaires, we wouldn't even have to tax them because they have no skills. So like the tax argument becomes irrelevant. It's much more effective to just stop giving them our money. Let's use it on our kids instead. Heather says Carville's a mind of the past. Yeah, I call him an 1850s Democrat because just look at him. You can tell. It's just, yeah. Well, they bring in Carville, and this is important to understand. Terry Ann asked, I'm not sure why they keep bringing in Carville. And this is because the centrist Democrats, they're so entitled. They've never had to deal with anything. They're so in such delusion. They're so separated from the mass of the population. That's why the problem is they just want to maintain an ineffective status quo. We don't have any progressive representation. Both the Democrats and the Republicans work to prevent that. Again, that's why, the Democrats could very easily be supporting a creator like me who's out giving these regular talks, who's spending time, who has influence to try to establish so we get a community that's willing to vote for progressive ideas. Democrats deliberately steal our oxygen. They want us underfunded. They don't want to provide a person like me with any resources, right? They don't want to give me speaking opportunities. They don't want to compile their platform with mine so that we can all grow, or so that they can win. They want to win, but only, they're willing to lose rather than risk their little consolidated power. That's what we have to break apart. And I keep saying those centrist Democrats are the bigger problem. They're the bigger problem even than the most radicalized of the right, because they are the enablers. They're the puppeteers. Hi, Courtney. Good to see Courtney. Barbara says, I'm a tech dinosaur? Okay. And probably older than many here, but I grew up with rotary dial phones. I did too. And no email, let alone internet. I predate the internet. So we have a lot of resources available now that I'm still trying to learn how to use. Yeah, but I think, Barbara, too, it's important to know there's a lot of other people that aren't tech people. When I ran a bike and ski store, there were people I knew I couldn't reach using all these other resources. There were people I had to reach with mail. And I knew that. And I had a list of the ones that weren't on email, that weren't on social media. They were the happier ones too. But we have to accept that. So, this is a perfect example. People that would come to Barbara and be like, well, why are you out on social? Why are you doing this? And Barbara has the knowledge and the understanding of reaching people that cannot be reached by these traditional methods, or the modern methods. So we should have grace for Barbara, because that's the kind of activism that is perfect for her. We need that. Yeah, we need to primary Jeffries and Booker. They need to go. That he was that last interview I saw of Jeffries was so embarrassing. They shouldn't be. Our politicians shouldn't feel the need to push their message on us and get angry when we push back, and that should be an instant dismissal of these individuals. We have to have ones that are willing to talk to us respectfully. They just want to dictate. 100%. AC. Oh, American citizen. Yep. Yep. Good morning, Courtney. Well, Yolanda, how can they say you don't provide enough content? You provide so much for it. Well, thank you, Yolanda. It's just, there's this ongoing discussion about, the internet is one thing. We have to do things in our community too. And I'm just saying, I'm doing a lot in my community too. The assumption can't be that just because you see a lot of me here, I'm not doing anything there. Just don't make that assumption, because there is a lot of work that needs to be done. But also, yeah, and neurodivergent says, have you talked to American Citizen? I've exchanged messages, but yeah, I would love to have a live sometime with American Citizen. We'll set that up. Republicans are leaving Congress and running for governor. The speaker, that Voss, just announced his retirement from Wisconsin, so that's going to be a win. Makes me hopeful that the election won't be entirely rigged, but we'll see. Yeah, and yeah, for Congress and governors, I mean, the governor ones is good, and it's kind of building up now. I've been trying to do it. I had a trickle of them coming in, but now that it's more and more primary season, I think more of them are kind of getting on the ball. But I really would like to see more and more of these progressives just jump on Substack and do daily lives like I'm doing, like right now, these kind of fireside chats. They don't recognize the power of it. And I think also too, they get embarrassed, like, if they're just gonna be talking to, like, 5 people, they're just like, "Well, that was a waste of my time." So it's appealing to them if I can come to them and be like, "Hey, look at this. Here's my profile. It's got, this many subscribers. So you won't be talking to nobody. You'll be talking to a large group, and then I'll send it out to all these other publications." And the more we can do that to normalize this platform, but I wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't internal messaging within the DNC to not support us here on Substack because they don't want to lose control of their centrist status quo messaging. We have to break free of that, and just this idea because it's just so darn clear. We should have had recounts in 2024. And the fact that the establishment Democrats refused to do any recounts when you're up against a guy who had, been convicted of election fraud and was a felon, and he was under indictment for election fraud again, that they wouldn't do recounts it's reckless and offensive. And they need to talk about it. They can't lecture us on it. They can't be angry at us for demanding that. And the new wave of progressive politicians, I think, is willing to listen to that. And part of it is these having these conversations with them. Rachel says, "Good Portuguese wine makes the typing bad. The word's flowery." Oh, I love it. I love it, Rachel. That was a wonderful word used before. Um, yeah, I'm sure somebody says. Barbara says, "You're right about Carville and the status quo members of the Dem Party. And they refuse to listen to constructive criticism. They just get all haughty, and they demand that we comply." Murphy says, "I'm not a bot." Good to see Murphy here. I know he's not. Mason, oh gosh, let's not make jokes like that. Mason says, "Don't believe Murphy. He's a bot." No, Murphy is not. I know Murphy. I hope we were just kidding. Okay. Don't wait that two perfect candidate. If one doesn't have any options, then they stay at home. Republicans win, and this amazing time will go. Well, see, the whole too perfect thing is always it's been deployed by the centrists to justify, all they have to do, get the candidates that actually stand for the people and interact with the people. Um, Centrists often use that perfection argument to justify running candidates that can't win. And it's not, and also too, like this Tallarico thing. You're seeing the DNC rally behind Tallarico, even though, he's been listening to who I believe is a blatant racist, Carville. And I think Jasmine Crockett, I mean, the polls suggest Crockett would win by a larger margin. And it would be nice if they would rally behind Crockett. But I mean, the centrist Democrats don't like black women. It comes to that. And that's why they sabotaged Kamala too, or Kamala too. So, we got to be careful, and I think we actually should demand candidates that denounce racism. I don't think that's too perfect by a long way. And so I mean, you'll see in the centrist Democrats the same sort of false arguments that you see in the radicalized right, where they say, rather than say they're defending white supremacy, they say we're defending our venerated traditions. Well, it's deceitful. It's a lie. They're using language games because they refuse to make denouncements. And, don't wait, the perfect candidate doesn't exist. And then they run a guy who, not Tallarico, but I mean, there's other candidates they've run who have had accusations of sexual misconduct, credible ones. That's outside of this whole perfect argument. The DNC is willing to turn away from these really horrible aspects of certain candidates, provided they're not too progressive. And so maybe what she was saying is, flip that argument around back to the centrists for saying, "Hey, don't wait for the perfect candidate that's like the centrist white supremacist. Let's just go ahead and vote for this progressive for a change." And you can flip those arguments around because they're contradictory. Carney says, "This is all relatable. I don't do blind compliance or faith, and people can get super defensive about it." And it really is. It was really hard to understand is that sometimes people do have an honest academic disagreement. And it doesn't mean that they're being disrespectful, but they're just taking the time to go through their own process. And that just takes time. But too often we meet people that come at you, right? And so it's easy to just not make to distinguish between those two, like an enemy versus somebody that is a potential ally who's just taking time to do 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 diligence, you know? So that's just a thing, and we just have to just hit that pause button. But we're hit by so many bots. And I'm teasing Murphy. I know Murphy's not a bot, but we are hit by so many bots that we get touchy. We get the trigger finger. So yeah. Francis says it's either stay in your lane or you're not doing enough. There's always a catchphrase to try to denigrate whatever you do. Stay true to your values. Yeah, and that's important too. And at the same time, I really, really do value the people that offer constructive criticism. You guys, I really value the guys that offer constructive criticism. I take time to listen to it. I sense frustration in people too, and a lot of that frustration is not. It's frustration about our times, and if it's just like it comes out, okay, I'm mad about this. Um, this conversation, that's something we have to moderate. We have to be kind and care for each other. Uh, but yeah, I mean, there's a sense, and I feel most empowered when I approach my activism the way I think is right. And if I too much surrender and do it the way other people pressure me to do it without fully knowing why, I have to go through a process. And there have been times when I've adopted what they've said. It took me a long time to really understand what Will Fullwood and what Natasha Kaye were saying about the Democratic Party. And even now, I'm trying to get progressives elected and trying to advocate for them. Um, Will has often talked about starting a third party. And I think there's places in red states where if you run as an independent, you have a chance to make some inroads into like these extremely gerrymandered and voter suppressed areas where the Democrats never could. But it's complex, and it's like, and it's just depending on where you are in the world, things look different. Depending on if you're a white man like I am or a Latina woman like my wife is, things look different and your actions are different. And we can be very certain that our way is right based on our perspective, but we can't see things from other perspectives. So that's always important. Mason says, I was just kidding. I know you. And then Murphy goes, beep, beep. That's what made me laugh. Yeah, maybe we're all bots. Yep. Rachel says, white supremacy is a system. White narcissism is people. Yeah. Yeah. And it's good to have these conversations. It's good to recognize the distinction, but I think people are not seeing enough that it's white supremacy is an ideology of genocide. And one of the other points of emphasis I want to make, it is a rotten branch of Christianity. There's many branches of Christianity, and white supremacy defiles Christianity, turns the structure of Christianity and turns into something evil. But there are many white supremacists who don't refer to themselves as that. They just think they're Christians. That's what they think. That's in their brains. They think they are Christians. And what's going on right now, too, that's not being reported is that all the immigrants who come up from South America are Roman Catholic. And white supremacy got affiliated with the Protestantism back in, 1900 or so. And so there's an eradication. It's a religious war is what we're seeing as much as a racial war. And these concentration camps that are coming up with these incinerators, these concerning reports about incinerators, they literally want them all dead. Because white supremacy is an ideology of genocide. It's a defilement of Christianity. And so this is why I've been approaching other religious leaders. I want people to know that this administration is the most anti-Christian administration in the history of the United States because they are rounding people up and confining them in concentration camps. And I think if we started with that narrative, and I've been using that as I call up the local churches. And again, it's like I'm in this rural conservative community. This tactic might not be effective where you are at. Where I am at, it is effective. But don't be like, well, Walter's not doing what I said, so he's not helping. It's like, you don't know what the people are like here. And I work on it. I'll go and talk to them. I try things out on the people I see and I cross paths with every day. I try new things all the time. So let's just not be so quick to jump to these conclusions. Like there's only one thing that's going to work because I don't know how this is going to end. It might end. There's a lot of possibilities. It might end with me in a concentration camp or an incinerator with all the rest of the dissidents. I hope not. I got a fortune cookie the other day that said I can look forward to a lot of looking back on very positive memories, so I'm kind of basing a lot of my hope on that fortune cookie. Take the hope where you can get it, you know? So, let me keep rolling down. We all do it and don't realize it until someone helps us recognize. Yep, and I mean, that's peeling back the layers of the indoctrination. We accidentally do things. We don't wanna be cruel, but white supremacy also indoctrinates us to think that cruelty is inevitable and that people that call us out on it are somehow the ones in the wrong because 'cause they're making us feel bad, and so I do try to do that, be mindful, but it takes a while too, because once you're in the habit, you've been in the habit of speaking this white supremacy dialogue, it's becomes fused with how you think about things. You have to reprogram yourself. I always compare that to giving up drinking. In your first day of giving up drinking, you habitually come home, you open the fridge, you grab a beer, and without even thinking about it, because that's what you do. And you have to use your brain to reprogram your heart so that you stop doing that. I mean, pouring out the beers is one thing, but it's like it takes a while to when you get to restaurants, you might accidentally order a beer for a while just because you just, oh, a hamburger and a beer. Then you're like, oh shit, I wasn't supposed to order that. And it takes you a while. And we just have to have grace with people that are really trying hard, but then continually make mistakes. You can tell the difference though between somebody who's making a deliberate mistake so they can antagonize and a person who's making, I feel bad about it. When I say things that are the wrong things and I hurt people, I feel really bad about it. And I try to do better. But it's like it's a long process. Oh boy. Let me continue to go down. My friend is scary enough, thank you. Or my mind. That's it, friend. My mind, yeah. Oh, this must have been a reference to walking through my mind, yeah. And Courtney says, Walter, if everyone was mindful about word choices the world would be a better place. Well, yeah, thank you. That's nice. And it's just that, yeah, that reprogramming, because if you get into the flow state sometimes, that's the problem with the flow state is that sometimes that conditioning that you didn't know you were subjected to comes out, but that's your unconscious biases. So I think it's really important to be vulnerable and allow yourself to speak things openly and freely so that when you make those mistakes, people can mention it and then you can go through that process. But that whole process is big. Oh, well, thank you, Mason. Frivolous is not a word. I connect to you. I appreciate that. Everybody's saying their mind is fairly scary. That was from Mason too. We all think that. Courtney says my mind is more hilarious than scary. Pure chaos up there. Oh, there's a lot of whimsy in mine. There's a lot of appreciating joy. Yeah, Mason says, let's be friends. This is to Courtney. Let's be friends. I need to laugh more. And thank you, Laura. I love your conversations. Walter, Laura says, yeah, there's a lot going on. And it's just reinforcing everybody that desperation, and especially too when you start adding in like, oh, like the prognoses of climate change and what we're actually facing, and it's just the urgency of all these things and the helplessness, and sometimes, yeah, it is important, and you can get so caught up, and that's why that need for taking a mental break is so important because so often you're just so uh, ultra focused on something, and you just need to get the view from 10,000 feet per second and reorient yourself because all those views are equally, you might spend most of your time at the view from like 6 feet, but a view from 10,000 feet is an equally valid view. It's an equally valid, excuse me, representation of reality. So you have to do that. And it is easy to get caught up in that worry. And I mean, this anxiety and this frustration is all part of it, but we have to be really diligent about even when we take a hit, and I take hits too from people, and we take a hit from them, and we have to just give it a second before we react and respond and hit back. We have to just give it a second and try to understand it. And sometimes you do gain something that empowers you through just hitting the pause button and trying to focus and realize what the perspective another person is coming from. I do that a lot. Sandra says our next door app is horrible. How the MAGAs attack. There's no progress. Yeah. Neurodivergent says, everyone has a role. Due to my disabilities, I have a hard time leaving the house. So I generate content, but I also try to connect people and get the word out. Yeah, that's so important. And we just have to, we can't fall into that assumption because somebody's not doing, because it is easy to get frustrated when you look around, you see other people not doing enough. And I certainly am guilty of that. Certainly am guilty of that. But then this is the case where my wife says it. It's like, you want to go to the demonstration? And I'm like, are you kidding me? She says, and it's like, yeah, the white man should go to the demonstration. The Latina immigrant should probably stay home. My kids should probably stay home. And I understand that. I'm not frustrated with them. I totally understand that. But you have to go through the process of understanding where other people are coming from, which takes a lot of time, We need to build that mental representation of the pyramid in our minds. And a lot of people, because the other people are walking up the other sides. We'll never see those sides. We will never see those sides because we don't have that experience and that physicality. And so we just have to have grace, but it's harder to maintain that mental image. You do get better at it. This reminds me of when I was in my astronomy classes in college, and you start out kind of disoriented, and then you go through the process of building that mental image of what the universe is like in your head, and then you outside and you start off with the viewpoint you've always used, but then you can flip to the viewpoint of what you've learned, and you can kind of visualize, okay, you visualize the whole solar system, where the moon is, where the planets are, and you just kind of get a look at it, and it kind of clicks into place, and it takes a second. And then you kind of go back to just like, okay, I'm just, walking around, like a hunter gatherer kind of viewpoint. But the more you put in that effort to visualize the complex structure of our reality, the more you do that, and it's a lot more complicated than a pyramid, but that's just an easy model I use to help convey what's going on here. It gets easier. It gets a lot easier. I mean, it's been since 2009 that I've been here with my wife, and I know a lot more now about what her experience is like. I've built a visual representation of what her experience is like in my mind. It's not 100% accurate, and I understand that she's the expert. And the same true is when I talk to like a racialized black man like Will Fullwood. I don't know his experience, but I've built models in my mind so I get a better understanding of it. And it's hard to maintain all these things. And we have to constantly be on guard, and people are constantly going to be calling you up because I can speak about the white man's, perspective with fluency, but everybody knows that one already, so that's useless. So my job here is to take the models that I've created about what it is to be Latina or what it is to be a racialized black person and convert them into the language so that white people understand. That's my role. That's a big part of my job, what I've been trying to do. Um, yeah, and it comes with coming up with these arguments like, yeah, billionaire welfare, and just like, why are we giving all this money to this group? Because the wealth is a construct of white supremacy, that some sort of a tangible thing that gives somebody leverage so that they can impose their will on you. I used the word, wealth equality the other day, and somebody was objected to that too, and I just like, just so that everybody has the equal access to the same resources, that's what we have to move towards. And getting there requires peeling back a lot of these arguments we have about justifications for wealth. Yeah, and Senator said you can call them progressive Democrats, but we can also create an yes. I mean, they're both important things. The one concern I have about a new party is, if you have two similar candidates running, we can default the win to the Republican. But I mean, in these deep red states, that's my strategy. I think is an effective one. In the deep red states, the Democrats don't even try, so we could have a progressive party. Progressive policies are very popular among the extreme right, and the centrists deny this, but it's a fact. Everybody I've talked to who lives in these areas understands that. I understand it from the people I've talked to. So yeah, a third party in places where the Democrats aren't even running, you know, there's an opportunity. We could perhaps transform the entire Republican stronghold into a progressive ideology. It's shaken free, though. I mean, there is one scenario, one possible scenario is that our elections are not rigged. I think they are, but the elections are not. And we are seeing, though, a lot of Democrats win elections, depending on the states. I think we need to pressure our governors to do more to establish election integrity. And then if we can get a whole new, the primaries are the key, though. I mean, if we can primary out all the sitting representatives and get a whole new government, whether they're Democrat or Republican, if there are new people in there, it's going to create this chaos, and I think it'll be useful. It's a different kind of chaos because at least it's not the chaos of corruption. It'll be the chaos of uncertainty where there's no control. And in those cases where people don't think they're above the law, then they're a lot more inclined to comply with the law and actually read the documents. And just one of the general traits this is my observation, but about comparing women to men, is that women are just a lot more likely to follow the rules as written. And I know personally myself, I'm very heavily indoctrinated to just kind of avoid rules and pretend that doesn't apply to me. That's part of white supremacy conditioning that I'm trying to overcome and be more of a rule abider as I get older and the stakes are higher. But right now, in this moment today, that's why I believe women make better candidates. Yeah, our Democratic leaders failed us, complete betrayal, and I hope a lot of them are held accountable. And honestly, if we go out into conservative communities and say, "Hey, let's hold both Democrats and Republicans accountable for the things that they've done, the laws that they've broken," you will get a lot of support for your candidate. Yeah. Yeah, and the Working Families Party, people have talked about that a lot. I need to know more on that. Thank you, Laura. I assume that was to me, saying you're a good man. I hope it was to me. Neurodivergent says, "Mason, I do what I can. I can't drive at night, and walking to and from there isn't always possible." You're doing enough, neurodivergent. You're doing enough. Everybody, you're doing enough. And it's not an easy process. Just showing up and listening to me talk about these things. These concepts, I don't expect you to absorb it all in this hour-long conversation. It comes in, you know, fast and slow bits and pieces. It's like teaching. When you're teaching a class, you see the improvement over the course of the year. People don't necessarily recognize it happens at the time, but just keep coming back, keep working on it. And you don't necessarily have to waste all your energy in frustration and worry. That doesn't help you. But this productive action, stretching your mind, seeing things differently helps. And that's the other thing is like, because people make the assumption that what you're doing isn't helping, but it is helping. And that's where that frustration comes from. They want you to do what they're doing because they perceive that as the path forward, but they're seeing it from a different side of the pyramid. So they don't have the complete picture. So just be content when you see other people working really hard, trying to do things better. Yeah, and Courtney, not every idea has to be a big one. There are a lot of seemingly small actions that anyone can do. Everything has an impact. That's absolutely true. It's so, so true. Just being kind to kids. Say something nice to a kid. Tell them, congratulate them today. Yep, and Mason, I like this. This support is lovely. Neuro, please credit yourself with all your attempts at getting out there. Yes, thank you. And everything, I mean, the online stuff is super important. Phone calls are important. Everything is important. Heather says so much of MAGA evil comes from a history of pain. There's value in approaching with compassion to see if there's response to this approach. Protect yourself. And some of them are just, but yeah, and that's the other thing because they're that bully culture and they're not powerful. I mean, if you saw that Cash Patel, for some reason he went and celebrated with the hockey team and he shouldn't be there and he looked just ridiculous. It's like, why are you so excited? You had nothing to do with this. And just like that deeply held desire to be like showered with glory and praise and just knowing you're never going to be worth it. But that's the other thing. We need to have that understanding. It's like, look, Mega, until you start doing some work and stop being the bully in the back of the classroom who was snarky about everything, you're never going to be loved. And so I guess there's a little bit of a tough love aspect there. So a lot of approaches work. Yeah, bullies. Yeah, if you approach only with compassion, the bullies just laugh at you. I think. But thank you, Laura. Don't feel guilty, Walter. Take care of you too. I did over this weekend. I and it wasn't by choice. I needed a break, but I took one. Neurodivergent says, "I'm a grain of sand," and recognize that, but that's not. Yep, we're raindrops filling up the ocean. So absolutely, sandstorms is a nice metaphor too. Yep, wonderful. Off topic, I'm having leftover green coconut curry and microwave coffee for breakfast. We had curry. What day was it? Friday. There was a Indian restaurant. It's really good. I got the. I went with mild. Every time it's a new place, I usually go with mild. And it wasn't so bad. I like some hot food. Neurodivergent says we're not robots. Walter, don't feel guilty for taking care of yourself. Yep, thank you. Yeah. Lulu says you can write postcards for liberal blue organizations. Some supply the postcards, however, you must pay for the postage. Yeah, there's a lot of. I love that. That's another. That Leaders We Deserve, I think, is a wonderful organization. That's David Hogg. I saw he came to Substack. I had sent him a message like if he wants to come on for live, I'd love it. But we'll see. Patriarchy is based on cruelty, stating the obvious. Yep, and I think patriarchy is derived in the United States from white supremacy. Over time, those things have evolved and changed. I think if we got rid of white supremacy, we'd see a lot of patriarchy also be disappeared. I think our focus has to be that, but other people see it differently, and that's totally fine. I love it. The conversations about our disagreements are how we learn. Neurodivergent said that before. This is from Nikki. My doctors have told me for my health, take a break from this. Now that the blood transfusions have me in a decent place, I'm getting out of the house more and I'm helping a candidate here, hopefully get elected to the Democratic Party chairman seat. Yeah, good, Nikki. Your personal health has got to be first, everybody. It's got to be first. And you don't realize too how much that doom scrolling hurts you. Just set those phones aside. Tomorrow, I must be talking about the Fran interview. I saw that. She was so good. Again, I'm talking with Francesca Hong, governor candidate for Wisconsin. That's going to be Wednesday at 1 p.m., along with Miss Alyssa Corrigan. Sometimes these candidate interviews are hard to organize and they have things that pop up. Fran is currently a state representative, so she might have something else to do, but I hope it happens and I'll just continue to be available to them, any of them that want to talk. Chris Armstrong wants to talk again. I'll talk to Emily Berge again. Lawrence Winterman set me up with, I think, two other candidates and somebody else. I was it Amber this morning who sent me up with somebody else. So they could come on whenever. We'll talk to them. Yeah, Chris says the rumor about what's happening to teen girls at Dilley concentration camp has me nuts. Yeah, and we have to demand. I mean, that's I'll talk about that today or on Wednesday with Fran. I mean, a candidate for governor has more of a platform than I do, but I have a platform too, and we can't be allowing these. What assurances do we have that ICE agents are not pedophiles? I mean, we deserve those assurances. What assurances do we have that girls are not getting raped at these concentration camps? What? Why don't we have a list of all the people that they've taken? All these things has to be talked about. Um, Sexual assault is more about power than anything else, and weak men crave power. Yep, Courtney, that's absolutely right. Mason says I read and respect it. Thank you for writing it. Amber says I'm trying to get Esther Kim. Okay, yep, that was Amber. I'm trying to get Esther Kim Verray running for CA's 40th congressional district to join Walter for life. Absolutely, and I think once they start recognizing, but like I said, I suspect there have been internal memos sent within the Democratic Party to keep people off these small creators on Substack because you see Democrats never use their platform and their celebrity to promote creators like me, right? The right does that. They promote their creators like Joe Rogan. They promote Charlie Kirk. Democrats don't use it. They don't help me out at all. A couple of them could give me a $50 paid sponsorship. I'm trying to get them elected. They wouldn't do that. They absolutely won't. We're entirely on our own. And it's the ideology that has to change. So every time I get a chance to talk to a candidate, I don't know. I mean, they're all up for primaries, and whether they win or not, they will be on a debate stage with the one who does win the primary. So we can't be results oriented too. I think that's another thing I've always often talked about. You do action if it's the right action. Sometimes it doesn't appear that it has any result, but it remains the right action. Be like erosion, be like erosion. Think of that. Just continue effort. Might take 10,000 years, but erosion always wins. Be erosion, people. Yeah. Neurodivergent said, "Did you see that Missouri has a bill to put immigrants in prison and forced labor for life?" I didn't see that. For what crime? I mean, that's some of this stuff, and just the stuff that gets proposed as law and makes it to the stage of getting written into a bill has been horrific for a long time. Yeah. And we have to change our fundamental culture. There's so much of recalibration that has to happen. There's such a big problem. And it doesn't end with the removal of this regime. We have to change our schools. We have to change our film industry, our publishing industry. Like a creator like me, at this point, it's pretty obvious to me that I probably should have earned a fairly a living wage book deal 15, 20 years ago. I've had book deals. None of them paid me very much. But it's all by design to keep rational, compassionate people from having any platform. That's the United States of America. That is what we live in. And that's why we have this horrific reality where, the pro-life, white supremacy, body control ideology is considered an acceptable viewpoint. We need to hit a society where that's considered detestable and abhorrent because it is. I wrote a note the other day. It's like, at what point in the United States do you get man or woman? Do you get your bodily autonomy? We know that legally women don't have it right now, but boys don't have it either. I think the number is 100%. Like of people that get sexually assaulted as children, it's 100%. We just don't. We're so indoctrinated. We don't perceive those transgressions against our body as assault because we don't feel we own our bodies, even as boys. Uh, you know, Boys are sent to go die in war, and that's supposed to be like your body belongs to the U.S. government. Fuck that. Fuck that. What has the U.S. government ever done for me? So and that one if we have to change that at that fundamental level. White supremacy is planted in kids when they're young because they're vulnerable to it. And it gets to that point where so many of us don't even speak out when we're sexually assaulted because who are we going to even talk to? That I think fundamentally, because white supremacy is the ownership of other bodies. All those things are in effect. And like I said, I don't see the way out. We're just making bits and pieces. The other thing too is like just this revelation is one of the things Will's talked about a lot is how we can't comprehend what these like the elite class that controls trillions of dollars and that forces us to pay taxes for the privilege of printing up money for us to use. Um, we can't comprehend what they think, and that's true. And this Epstein files is just giving us a glimpse into the depravity of their minds, but that's not the totality of it. And that, as far as they're concerned, that's just a side thing. That's just something that's not even the main evil that they're committing. They won't even apologize for these rapes of children that they're doing and the cannibalism of babies and things like that. And there's a big structure in place that we have to tear down, and we haven't seen it yet. We're not at a point where we've completely seen the evil. We've seen glimpses of the evil. We haven't seen the whole thing yet. So that's why everybody we just have to have these coalitions. We have to have these coalitions of decency come together. And yeah, in addition, exposing the concentration camps and the rapes going on in these concentration camps. We got a lot of work to do right now. So have grace with each other. We need allies right now. Courtney says, I didn't see that neuro, but I did see a post from Jen Budd that pregnant minor immigrants are being sent to Texas facility. Were they pregnant before they were taken in? Yeah, this is this situation. There's so many human rights violations going on right now. And I mean, yeah, I mean, the Epstein files are horrific and they don't deserve any less attention, but these things going on in concentration camps need to be at the same level. Because right now, going on right, it's not the past. These same atrocities are happening right now. I'll talk about that with Fran on Wednesday. Show up for that, please. Amber says, if anyone else wants to add something, oh, great. Yeah. She had a Substack that seemed pretty inactive, but you can also email her. And it's here. I'll put this down at the bottom. Info, if I can do this, control copy. So, yeah, email this person. I'll just put that in there. And I hope this doesn't send me down to the bottom. Good. Email Esther Kim. Oh, I got to get her name. Is it 3 names or okay? It's hard to tell off the email, but yeah, email that congressional candidate and encourage her to come talk to me. That helps. I've had a couple candidates say that they came to me because one of my readers met them at a rally or something or at a speech, so they talked, and so we're continuing to grow. And these viewpoints then will become part of the national discussion as they need to be. Yeah, so many people still talking about things like baseball and it's just nonsense. All right. Courtney says we've got the snow and wind, but no power outages. Oh gosh, hope the worst quickly passes. Few flakes. Melissa Corrigan has talked about how the best way to reach people is still mailers. I used to use them when I had a business. I don't have money to send out mailers, but maybe we'll get there. Tiny flakes. People are talking about the weather. Thank you guys. I kind of miss you always over the weekend. Joe says, not recounting actually gave me a feeling like a broken spine. Yeah, I could not believe it. I was after the election. I assumed that there was some sort of a sting operation going on. They were going to get him in a room and say, hey, we got this evidence. We know that you did this. If you resigned, they want to avoid a civil war, but doing nothing. Yeah, I mean, the level of corruption among the Democratic Party is enormous, and I think we have to. And the fact that they pressure us to not even talk about election and not even talk about recounts, that doesn't make sense. We have every right. Republicans are still demanding recounts in 2020. We have every right to demand recounts. It's a law for a reason. We have that right. And part of white supremacy is getting people to believe they shouldn't enact or invoke a law that they do have every right to invoke. So Democrats are guilty of that. Working Families Party, I have to look at that. Is Natasha here? I didn't see her name. So let me go. Oh, yep. The Daily Whatever just came on. I guess I should move moving on. I'd like to give them. So let me roll on down. Yeah, I get tired. Hi, Susan. Nice to see you. Listen to the audio. Why are these Dems wins not changing the balance of the House? And they mostly say the problem is we got a couple. Yeah, we haven't had too many House elections lately. There's been a couple state elections. Yep, I think rules worth following. See you, Judah. Thank you for coming in, and I'll come back. Oh look, yep, I'm at the end now. Perfect. I got down to the end. And Howard says, I know a guy running in California District 3. Yes, please. Please have them talk to me. Whatever. I am flexible. I will talk to them. And it's easy for them to reach a lot of people whenever I'm sure these candidates are exhausted, but any one of them that wants to come on, my platform is for them. The whole point of this platform is to get progressives elected, to get new blood into our government. Hello, Liberty Guardian. Thank you for coming, but I am just finishing up So I think that's it for today. I got down to the bottom. I love all these comments. Thank you guys. It was so helpful. I'm glad to see you after the weekend. I hope everybody got rest.